Hello, welcome. Today we're going to be chatting about some essay collections, some of my favorite ones that I would like to recommend, and ones that are currently on my shelf to be read. This was a video that some of you had asked for, which I really appreciate. If there is ever a video that you would like to see from me, I would love to hear about it. Definitely all ears for video suggestions. Recently, in the last year and a half or so, I have really fallen in love with creative nonfiction, essay collections, and overall would still consider myself pretty new to the genre. So if you have any recommendations in this genre of writing for myself or anyone else, would love to hear about them in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get started with some of my favorite essay collections that I have read thus far that I would like to recommend to you all. And the first one is one that I've definitely talked about previously on my channel. This book is not about Benedict Cumberbatch, The Joy of Loving Something, Anything, Like Your Life Depends on It by Tabitha Carvan. This was one of my favorite books that I read last year in 2023. I picked it up initially thinking that it would be kind of a cringy laugh at a younger version of myself who was very much a Benedict Cumberbatch fangirl and a BBC Sherlock fangirl as well. But this book actually turned out to be an unexpected cathartic gut punch. On the surface, in this collection, Tabitha Carvan is examining her own midlife crisis, which was brought on in part by her developing a very intense fixation, shall we say, on Benedict Cumberbatch, the actor, something that she felt incredibly shameful and embarrassed about as a 40-year-old mother of two. However, this collection is more deeply about women and girls enjoying things and unpacking how it becomes societally unacceptable oftentimes for women and girls to express their deep love, enjoyment, excitement for something. The gender differences in what is seen as permissible for men and women when it comes to things like play and the appropriate, i.e. masculine approved ways that we are allowed to show and exhibit passion. What this collection in essence boils down to is a book about joy, allowing yourself to follow a joyful spark whenever it occurs without shame, which let me tell you, was something that I didn't realize that I very much needed to hear when I read this book, and is something that I have definitely been thinking about quite a bit since I read it. So if we're talking essay collections, Olivia Laing is definitely a name that I feel like comes up pretty often. This is my favorite Laing collection out of the two that I have read. This is The Lonely City, Adventures in the Art of Being Alone. Laing moved to New York City in their mid-30s and found themselves inhabiting the sense and feeling of loneliness on a daily basis. Intrigued by the sense and feeling of shame that loneliness was invoking, Laing began to explore this feeling in relation to living in a city and through the lives and works of 5 different artists. This was a really powerful read for me in the wake of experiencing the lockdowns and the pandemic of the past few years, the isolation and loneliness that was and in many ways is still being felt as a result of it. Next we have an essay collection that I read for the first time well over a decade ago in high school. This is The Undertaking, Stories from the Dismal Trade by Lynch, and this book has haunted me in a good way since I read it. Lynch is a published poet as well as an undertaker for his small town in rural Michigan. This essay collection is Lynch's ruminations on mortality, the ways we memorialize the dead, grief, recollections from his own life, and his unique profession. I remember this being a good mix of funny anecdotes, witticisms, along with the more sobering material and topics in this collection, and I'm definitely overdue for a reread of this one. The next 2 recommendations are ones that I don't have physical copies for, so I will be putting the book cover up on the screen over there. And also, if you would like to hear more in-depth reviews of these 2, I will link the appropriate video where I talk about them more in depth. But the first one is Arrangements in Blue, Notes on Loving and Living Alone by Amy Key. I read this essay collection, memoir essay collection, last year in 2023. As mentioned, this is a memoir essay collections with deep personal musings on the author's life, Joni Mitchell's seminal album Blue, and the entangled themes of loneliness and intimacy. It ponders whether we can rid ourselves of this underlying personal and often societal pressure and need for romantic love in order to quote-unquote have a complete life. I certainly wish that this essay collection had existed and I had picked it up in my early 20s. Younger me would have felt very seen, very heard by this collection, and also very comforted by a lot of the insights that he relates in this book. And the last essay collection that I would like to recommend is A Life of One's Own: 9 Women Writers Begin Again by Joanna Biggs. This collection is an intermingling of biographic snapshots of 9 famous female authors, woven amongst Joanna Biggs' own autobiography and life reflections. This is a personal collection recounting Biggs' own personal reckoning with the idea of female domesticity, realizing her own deep need to create a life that allows her to center her own creative work. All of this in the wake of her own divorce and the untimely passing of her mother. She weaves her own personal anecdotes, realizations, events in and throughout the lives of the 9 female authors that she is recounting and examining. And now we get into the TBR section of this video. These are a number, actually the majority, you can see by the shelf behind me where I usually keep my essay collections, a TBR list of the essay collections that are currently unread on my shelves. And first up, we are starting with a doozy. This is Slashing Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion. When people talk essay collections, Didion's name is one that very much often comes up, so I figured that it would likely be a good idea to include her in some of my initial exploration of the genre. This is a seminal essay collection that came out in 1968 and is reportedly a portrait distinctly captures California in the 1960s based on Didion's own experience of living there, traveling through that area. I've heard that Joan Didion has a very distinct and captivating writing voice, which I'm really looking forward to experiencing when I dive into this one. Next up is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. Personally, I'm a longtime fan of John Green and his books, as well as the YouTube community that he and his brother Hank Green have built over the past 15 years, holy crap, on YouTube, Nerdfighteria. John and Hank's videos have very much always been centered around examining the world and people complexly and with nuance, finding ways to build ties and community that can be a force for positive change in the world. The tagline for this collection is Essays on a Human-Centered Planet, with, quote, observations that double as exercises in memoiristic empathy, which sounds very much in line with a lot of the Vlogbrothers videos that have been put out, very much in line with a lot of the work that John has been doing in the world, and I'm really looking forward to reading this collection. Continuing to dive into Laing here with the other collection of theirs that I have on my shelf. This is Everybody, a Book About Freedom. This essay collection, however, according to the description, examines the body as a source of pleasure, pain, vulnerability, and power, quote, arriving at a moment in which basic bodily rights are once again imperiled. Everybody is an investigation into the forces arranged against freedom and the celebration of how ordinary human bodies can resist oppression and reshape the world. Another heavy hitter, this is Susan Sontag's Against Interpretation and Other Essays. This was her first essay collection that initially was published in 1966. It contains some of her most famous essays, such as Notes on Camp, as well as the titular essay Against Interpretation. Excited to dive into this one and get a taste of one of the giants, so to speak, in the genre. Speaking of giants, or at least modern contemporary giants, we have Rebecca Solnit's A Field Guide to Getting Lost. Rebecca Solnit of Hope in the Dark and Men Explain Things to Me fame. This is a collection of hers that contemplates the history of walking as a cultural and political experience, which for some people may sound utterly tedious. However, I for one was tantalized by the part of the book description that reads, quote, A field guide to getting lost draws on emblematic moments and relationships in Solnit's own life to explore the issues of wandering, being lost, and the uses of the unknown. The result is a distinctive, stimulating, and poignant voyage of discovery. I've mentioned this book on this channel before, I believe in upcoming releases that I'm excited for. I finally have my hands on a copy. This is Monsters, A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Dederer. I've also definitely had a few of you comment on that video, and I believe some others asking for my thoughts on this book once I have read it. Definitely planning to make a dedicated review video once I do get to it. This collection postures itself as an interrogation on how we make and experience art in the modern age of movements like Me Too and the link between genius and monstrosity. Is it possible to separate art from the artist? Does supposed genius grant dispensation for artists who have done horrible things? And how do we balance our rightful sense of moral outrage to these things with an equally undeniable love of the work? I'm sure this collection is going to give me, and anyone else who reads it, quite a lot to chew on. Next we have Indistinguishable from Magic by Catherine M. Valente. This is a collection of essays, interviews, blog posts by the author on all manner of things, fairy tales, pop culture, writing, gender, and the fantasy genre, etc. Valente has a very distinct, sometimes verging on overwrought writing voice that I feel like I can never get enough of when I'm reading her. Looking forwards to delving into this collection of her nonfiction writing. Definitely had to mention The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. This is another historical piece of nonfiction essay writing. This was originally published in 1963 into the burgeoning American Civil Rights Movement. It is one evocation of Baldwin's early life growing up in Harlem, New York, and an examination of the consequences of racial injustice in a way that is intensely personal and provocative. I've always been in awe of Baldwin when I've come across his work and the legacy that he's created. Looking forwards to finally jumping into his published work. And then we also have Upstream, essays by Mary Oliver. Listen, if Mary Oliver wrote it, that means I'm gonna read it. She is my favorite poet. I will snatch up just about anything of hers that comes my way or that I see, particularly an essay collection. Quote, as she contemplates the pleasures of artistic labor, finding solace and safety within the woods and the joyful rhythmic beating of wings, Oliver intimately shares with her readers her quiet discoveries, boundless curiosity, and the exuberance for grandeur of our world. Honestly, I don't think I could want anything else from this collection. And that is it, my friends. Those are some essay collection recommendations and ones that I have currently on my shelf that you will likely see in upcoming reviews, wrap-ups, that kind of a thing. Again, if you have any suggestions for me or anyone else in regards to essay collections, creative nonfiction, please leave them in the comments below. Would love to read about them. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. One, I really appreciate it. Two, it helps my channel grow. I definitely need to run out the door to catch the bus to work, and my battery is blinking at me, so I think it is time for me to wrap up this video. But I hope you all are having a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I really look forward to seeing you all in my next video. Bye.